Support for this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and here's my reminder to tell you that whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone. And it's easy to feel like you and you alone have to have it all figured out. But the truth is, nobody does. Not myself, not your neighbor, your cat or dog. Nobody has all the answers. And nobody should do this thing called life alone. One thing that keeps me up at night and I need help with is I'm a new parent. How much screen time, bedtime, is he getting enough playtime? It's stressful. So what helps me is to talk it out with people that I trust and I know they have my back. And BetterHelp works. They've got an average rating of 4.9 stars out of 5 for a live session based on almost 2 million client reviews. You don't have to be on this journey alone. Find support and have someone with you in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/elevator. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/elevator. Recovery Elevator episode 587.
Each time in my life, it's made me stronger, and I've felt like, wow, this actually isn't that bad. I'm going to get through it. And thank God I'm not drinking, because that would make this a whole lot worse.
Welcome to the Recovery Elevator Podcast. My name is Paul Churchill, and this is How We Quit. On today's episode, we have Will. He's 32 years old from Allenstown, New Hampshire, and he took his last drink of alcohol on October 5th, 2019. Great job, Will. I have a couple corrections to make. In my interview with Chris, this is episode 584, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I reversed a stat. I said that 54% of Americans don't drink alcohol. It's actually swapped. So 54% of Americans identify as a drinker or someone who regularly consumes alcohol. And did you know this is also the lowest number of people who identify as a drinker since they started tracking this in 1939? Wow, things are changing. Stay the course. There's a massive tailwind taking place. And I've got another correction to make. I've always thought that alcohol was a Schedule I substance. I've podcasted about it. It's in my latest book, Dolce Vita, but it's not. In 1970, the CSA Act was passed, making alcohol and tobacco exempt from the list of schedules. So I want to keep this podcast accurate, and it's not on the scheduled list of the most harmful and addictive drugs. So there is a list of schedules from 1 to 5 of the most dangerous and addictive drugs aimed to help people know what is dangerous and what is not, their level of risk. So what I can tell you about this list of schedules, these harm schedules, is that it's meaningless. It's absolutely worthless. And here's a couple reasons why. The most dangerous drug, alcohol, which kills roughly 100,000 people each year in America alone, and that's a low estimate, isn't even on the list. Oops. But they do have heroin as a Schedule I drug, and I do agree with that. And that kills about 8,000 people per year. Below that, in Schedule II, is oxycodone, which kills more people than heroin. So even that's a little foobar there. And then they had marijuana, which was a Schedule I substance for decades, and it's got 0 recorded overdoses. Again, 0. So the most dangerous drug out there, alcohol, and the second most dangerous one, tobacco, isn't even on the list anywhere. So overall, this schedule list is laughable at best, and it shines light just on so much bullshit that goes on. But good news here, you don't need some silly list that isn't even the least bit accurate to tell you what is harmful to your health or not. Alcohol, guys, you already know it. It's a poison. It's not a Class 1 carcinogen. Well, we know the law they passed in 1970, but I assume if it were even written on the list, that it's so dangerous that the list would just deteriorate into a lumpy, moldy piece of paper or just incinerate. Yeah, let's go with that. So again, alcohol, you already know what it is. It's poison, it's garbage, it's total shit. At least in the way that we prefer to drink it. Let's keep that in mind. And I want to mention this podcast is not out to demonize alcohol. Heck, drink one for me if you're a normal drinker. But if you're not, keep showing up, stay the course, keep listening, be kind to yourself. This thing takes time. Now, before we hear from Will, let's hear from my favorite resource, Cafe RE.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I've been a member of Cafe RE since 2018. The biggest thing Cafe RE has given me is real, authentic, and meaningful friendships. I call them my chosen family, people who truly understand me and unconditionally love and support me. Some of them I see almost daily in our Zoom chats. Some I see in person a few times a year. But I know, without a doubt, that they're all just a phone call away and that they'll be there when I need them most. Cafe RE gave me a place to grow, to heal, and to keep choosing myself. Whether you're newly sober, sober curious, or years into this journey, Cafe RE meets you exactly where you are and reminds you that you belong. If you're looking for a place to land, visit cafe-re.org and enter the promo code CONNECT for your first month free. Again, that's cafe-re.org, promo code CONNECT for your first month free.
Will, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Will, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Let's get right into this. When was your last drink?
My last drink was October 5th, 2019.
Yeah, that's what's up, Will. You're in the middle of year 6. Unbelievable. Was there a time where you never thought you'd make it this far?
Oh, yeah. Throughout most of my 20s, or at least half of my 20s, I thought like stopping drinking for good just felt like impossible.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of nodding heads out there. It was for me. And listeners, I would say our average sobriety time is like anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half, or about a year. But I love it when people have multiple years of sobriety, A, to show you, yeah, you can go the distance. It can
Yeah.
be done. And B, to almost unpack a couple of those years there, because Will, I'm going to ask you later, like what was year 1 like versus year 2? Because I know they're all different. It's like the themes just keep changing. What was holding me back in the past, it will show up. You're like, all right, let's work on shame this year. Let's do it.
Hmm.
And so I'm excited to hear about your journey and share it with the best audience on the internet. But before we get in your story, Will, let us know about yourself. This is like where you're calling in from, your age. What does your professional life look like? What does your family life look like? And most importantly, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, I'm 32. I live in New Hampshire. I work for the Postal Service. I have all sorts of hobbies. I'm a into writing. I'm a huge fiction nerd. I love film. I love hiking and traveling. My family, my dad lives in Florida. My mom lives here in New Hampshire, and I live with my brother.
Any pets?
Yep, there's a dog. Her name's Callie. She's a pit mix. She's beautiful. Brown with a little white belly. She's like 8 years old. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
okay.
amazing.
Tell me about the Postal Service. What I think that's like the biggest thankless job in America, really. What is your role with the Postal Service?
So I work at one of the distribution centers. So it's a very strong union presence. I'm so grateful for the job. I've done all sorts of stuff. I've waited tables. I've done a security guard. I've worked in recovery and peer support, a lot of food service. But this job, I mean, the benefits and the dignity that the employees are treated with respect to how much PTO you get and the support you have from the union. It's a job I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, I will tell you
But
and your team thank you for getting letters across the United
yeah, no
States.
problem.
Can't really believe how complicated that is. You said you're a big film guy.
Oh
What
yeah.
type of genre and what's a film? I would say your favorite film, but those are hard questions to ask. But what's your favorite film?
Okay, so I have a solid top five. I'm a big film person. So my number one is The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson. Number two, in second place, would be 12 Angry Men. Number three would be The Dreamers, and then Dog Day Afternoon, and then Apocalypse Now. So I
Uh,
love dramas. Yeah.
okay, I got some catching up to do or some movies to watch. And what you said you like to read, right? And write, I think you said.
Yeah, I write comics, I write short fiction. I got a couple of novel manuscripts laying around.
Well, Will, I'm going to turn it over to you with your story, man. Let's do it.
All right. I grew up in a kind of a strict religious household, and I went to like a religious elementary school that was a private school, and then I they pulled me out of it, and I was homeschooled pretty much from middle school through high school. So I don't know. I felt over those years I didn't really have any friends, and by the time I was 15 or 16, I just had this feeling like I was missing out on a lot of life experiences that I wasn't going to get back. And I wasn't able to articulate that when I was that young, but it was just this depressing feeling like, man, like, I've never had a relationship. I don't have friends. I'm not so by the time I was 18 and my brother got his first apartment, I moved out with him. So I was like, all right, it's time to make up for lost time. And that's kind of when the partying started. I had my first drink was just a sip of like Mike's Hard Lemonade, and felt the burn of that and the weird tart taste of that drink, and it didn't really do anything for me. When I started working part-time jobs, I think it was food service. That was my first kind of like taste of life outside of like the religious bubble I was in. So I got to experience more of the real world, people with that come from different places, different experiences. First time being around, queer people and people that have had problems and parties and addiction and all that stuff that comes with kind of restaurant life, different backgrounds. So that opened me up to kind of like partying, but I was never a partier. I always had a lot of, at least back then, I had a level of social anxiety that kept me from really getting into like the nightclub life and all that stuff. And by the time I was 18 or 19, my routine was like I worked in food service. I would get out of work, I would come home, and my brother was really into like the nightclub life. Like he was a party guy, like Thursday through Sunday, nightclubs, bars. So at our little tiny apartment in Nashua, we lived on the third floor of this old house. It was a one bedroom that didn't have a door, so my brother had a curtain for his part of the room, and my setup was in the living room. So I had like my bed, which kind of doubled as a couch for guests when they came over. So I would come home, and there would be a box of wine in the fridge, a handle of vodka in the freezer, beers, solo cups everywhere from, people drinking. And I would just kind of drink alone, go to bed, do that over again. I gravitated very quickly to drinking alone because I felt anxious around people. I was very insecure. But I found a group of friends between 19 and 21. I was able to get alcohol because some of them were older, but also we were kindred spirits. We were all kind of creative people. We're all a little nerdy. My life was very simple back then. It was like you work your job, you get out. Whose house are we going over? We're going to play video games, or I'm going to watch them. I was never really a gamer. I would watch them play video games while I drink. And sometimes it'd be pot.
Will, there's something
I think,
I want to jump in and
yeah,
ask you. About a minute ago, you said you ended up drinking alone fairly quick,
yes.
right? Was there a voice that says, "Wait a second, I'm in my early 20s or maybe late teens, and I'm drinking alone. This might not be the way to go."
Honestly, then no, I had nothing. I had no experience around people. Like I have, addiction history in my family on both sides, but I never really experienced it like firsthand. So I thought it was normal. As I got into my early 20s, I started taking community college classes, and I was kind of living a double life in a way because I feel like my parents, I wasn't lying to them about where I was at with faith or anything like that. I wasn't going to church or anything, but I wasn't letting them all the way in on what my actual life looked like day to day. When I got into my early 20s and I started taking community college classes, and then I remember when I was 22, and at this point I am, yeah, drinking a lot. I've kind of surrounded myself with heavy drinkers. I was sitting on my first lunch break at a new restaurant, and I was 22, but a lot of the coworkers were, because this was kind of a rural, middle to upper class area in New Hampshire, were like either high school or on break from college. And I just felt like an outsider. And I realized like, oh my God, like something about that first lunch break there, feeling like an outsider and feeling not old, but definitely a little older than the other kids. There's no one to step in and guide me anymore. I'm an adult. Like it's all on me. And no one's going to make me go back to school. No one's going to make me go for a supervisor position to make more money. No one's going to make me stop drinking. It's all on me. And that kind of anxiety and that feeling of being lost, it just kept me drinking. And I got a DUI when I was 22. I was driving drunk quite a bit at that point. It was just a normal part of my life. And that DUI was devastating to me because I had never been in any type of trouble. My dad was a cop. So, and I remember my brother bailed me out and I went home and I told him I was going to, fess up. The next morning when I drove over to meet with my parents and tell them, it was like an outer body experience I was having driving to their house. I was just like, I can't believe this is about to happen because I was still very sheltered in a way. Even I got a little more life experience out.
Will, I think
Mm-hmm.
I know how you're feeling. I got a DUI right after I graduated college. It's like, now let's
Oh,
go tackle the world, but you got to deal with your DIY first. And I remember the morning before I told my parents, I was taking a shower and just the feeling of shame, anxiety, and guilt. And oh my God, I let everybody, including myself, down. It was probably the
mm-hmm.
longest shower I've ever taken in my entire life. I'm like, all right, get out of here, dry yourself off, go downstairs, tell your parents what happened last night. So I know the feeling, man. And that was your first DUI, you said, right?
My only.
How did your
And
parents take it, and how did you tell them?
I just showed up to their house. I sat down with them in the living room and I said, hey, I got arrested last night. And we talked through it. And I wasn't ready to stop drink. I still didn't think I had a problem. I just thought, oh, I just, I made a rough bad luck. So I wasn't so much focused on getting sober as cutting down, moderating, and then starting the whole process, the whole legal process of getting my license back, which, I go take the classes, the drunk school thing. I paid all the fines, but I thought my life was simple before. Not having a car, my life got a whole lot simpler. It was wake up, walk an hour and a half to work, and come home. And the drinking never really stopped over that. I think I lost my license for 8 months. I live in New Hampshire. So the way it worked out, it was like spring to right before winter. So I was able to walk to work and not have to worry about the snow or anything and then get my license back.
Yeah, Will, that helps. Not having to walk in the snow. Was there a voice that's like, hey, man, we just got a DUI. Maybe we cut back. Maybe we change our drinking habits a bit. What happened
Hmm.
after that in regards to your drinking?
I maybe took 30 days off and then I was just like, I'll moderate. And then I made new friends because I had to transfer to somewhere I could walk to, transfer stores, restaurants, and made new friends, started partying with them. And then, I got my license back. And then the financial kind of ramifications of that DUI started to take place, which really just sent me on a downward spiral, honestly, because I was making, I don't know, $11 an hour, and I have like an SR22 on my car insurance, which was like it was like a $250 bill every month now. And I'm only making $11 or $12 or whatever, and I have rent to pay and I have debt. I accrued thousands of dollars of debt. I mean, hope kind of disappeared for me. I felt like I had no options, and I maybe had, $40 to $60 a week that wasn't allocated towards bills or food or gas. And like, what else am I going to do with that besides drink? So that's 22, 23, and 24. That's probably my rock bottom years.
Your
Like I can't,
ages, not years, but like your
age. Yeah,
age
my
23 to
ages.
age 24. Okay.
Yeah.
And you quit drinking at like 25 or 26?
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, over those times, the bills were piling up. I was in debt. I was hiding my debt because it was embarrassing. Like I didn't want my roommates to know that I was like maxing out my credit cards, paying my end of bills and stuff like that. And I was driving this horrible Volkswagen Passat. It was a lemon, It always had these electrical problems and all that stuff. So I was dumping money into that too. And at that point, I'd become a security guard. And I was also washing dishes at Whole Foods. And I was working like 56 hours, sometimes more than that, and still not really having enough money to save. And the depression just started to sink in. I'm just like, I've screwed up my life. My whole early 20s for me, there are good memories and good times, but I was kind of haunted by social failures, by opportunities I messed up, people that cut me out of their life because just my behavior got worse.
And I bet you figured out that alcohol made all that stuff lighter, softer, and even
Hmm.
went away, right?
Yep. I lost friends. I ruined shots at relationships. And when I was 24, I was in a place, I was suicidal. I was depressed. I just felt so much shame for what had happened to me and or what I had done. I felt like I had become a negative influence on people around me, and I just started burning bridges. I turned to isolation because I was just like, all right, I'm losing friends. I can't be blacked out in bars anymore. I can't get another DUI. So I would just stay in my room and drink. And I tried therapy, but without addressing the alcoholism. Like I went to a therapist at 24 and I said, I'm so depressed and anxious. I need help with that. And I'm sure it was obvious that I had an alcohol problem too, but
Well, did they
um,
ask about your
they
drinking?
did. They did, and I lied.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I was
I
like,
don't mean to
yeah.
laugh, but yeah, I've done the
No, it is
same.
funny.
I know
I
there's a
mean,
lot
it's
of
it's
nodding
it's
heads being like, damn it.
it's the
Yeah,
insanity of it.
yeah.
I wasn't ready to address that.
And Will, you also know there's no way you can do any work on depression or anxiety with alcohol in your life, at least when
Oh
it's,
yeah.
like an addiction thing.
Yeah, so I had started some therapy to work on my depression, but the alcohol persisted. I was a big whiskey guy, and but it would pretty much malt liquor was pretty much all I could afford towards the end anyway, to drink every day and sometimes in the morning or at night or whatever.
Drink in the morning or night, whatever. Drinking malt
Hmm.
liquor in the morning, age 24.
Yep.
Was it King Cobra?
It was King Cobra, those cans, like the tall boy cans, like Natty Daddies and the Hurricane High Gravities and all that stuff.
Yeah,
You know
maybe a
those?
Colt 45 thrown in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Colt 45.
I do. So you're drinking malt liquor in the morning at 24. And no, there's no judgment on my end because I've done it.
Yeah.
Was there a voice? It's like, Will, man, life's hard, but this isn't making it harder.
There was a voice, and there was plenty of nights where I was hammered and I poured out the last few sips of the beer that was left in the can as like a symbolic, like I'm done, you know.
Pour some out for the
um,
homies.
I was so anxious and so ready to kind of end it at 24 because I just didn't have hope for my future.
End the
I
drinking or end Will's
My
life?
life,
Okay.
yeah.
Was
I
there action on that?
There was ideation. There was, trying on the belt and seeing how it feels against hanging from the door. At one point, there was never a real attempt, but it was certainly flirting with it. I mean, one point I did climb over a bridge because I had left some Chinese restaurant. I was hammered and it was winter too. And I climbed over the edge of a bridge and I just stood there and I'm just like, I'm too scared to jump, but maybe if I hang out here long enough, I'll just slip and fall.
Mm.
And a car stopped and they were like, hey, are you okay? And then, I just kind of played it off. Like I was like, oh, I'm just messing around. I hopped back over and I'm just like, have a good night. And, I just kind of walked off like I was joking around. I was also like on my final warning at work because I was showing up late all the time. And I was sitting at home one day and there was an Amazon series with Benedict Cumberbatch called Patrick Melrose. It's about addiction and trauma and stuff. It's a heavy, dark series. It's a 5 episodes. It's based off of, I think, nonfiction books that an author wrote about his life, his journey into recovery. I binged all 5 of these episodes, and there's something about them that inspired me to like, I should at least give treatment a shot. I've tried the AA thing, and at that point, I came into AA with a lot of judgment. When I would show up to a meeting, I would latch on to the one thing that I didn't like that I heard and dismiss the whole thing.
Yeah, this won't
Um,
work for me because look what I just
mhm.
heard. So you've gone to AA. Imagine you're trying to cut back, moderating, and so you were at a point where you knew you had to quit drinking, right?
Yes, I was getting desperate to stop, but I just didn't know how. So I saw the show and I was like, oh, like there's something about that series that inspired me to like try something new. So I called my boss, and this is like 11 a.m. on like a Wednesday or something. I'm drunk. I call my boss and I say, I need to go to rehab and I need you to take me off the schedule. And he helped me out. You know, he was concerned. And then I went to my other job when I sobered up and I spoke to HR and said I need some time off from both my jobs so I can go. Then I told my brother and I told my parents, and burning the ships or whatever.
Okay, yeah, I was
and
gonna get there. Yep, burning the
yeah,
ships.
and then I found a place called Baldpate Hospital in Georgetown, Massachusetts. It was like an hour and change away from where I lived, and I went there for detox. You know, they said you can't show up here drunk, so I got my dad drove me. He picked me up and drove me down there. And I stayed there I was planning to stay for 30 days, but insurance only covered the detox part. So I was there for 9 days and it was an amazing experience. I'm fortunate that I had a really good rehab experience. I know it can be hard in those spaces sometimes, but for me, I met a lot of amazing people and yeah, I got to talk through some stuff and I left that rehab and after 9 days. I started going to AA meetings.
On your burning the ships day, how did it feel after each conversation? Where did you leave and be like, "Oh shit, I just told my boss and I'm on my way to my next job to talk to human resources? Is this
Yeah,
really happening? Like walk the other direction, Will." How did it feel? Oh, and then I'm gonna tell my parents?
it felt good. It felt like I was trying something new. My parents, I had already been through this conversation with them, not about retreatment, but about going to meetings and stuff. And I was stringing them along. My dad would always check in and be like, "How are the meetings?" And I'd be like, "Oh, good." It felt good to commit, to go to the jobs, and everyone was concerned and because they had no idea.
It felt good to commit, right? Those are major action items where progress is happening. And I remember with each burning of the ships, I'm like, shit, we're really doing this. Oh, but you're like, wait, maybe I can. And then with every reaction, you're like, hey, can you move the work schedule for me? Sure thing, Will. Let's make it happen. Like the stars will align when somebody makes the decision to be the best version of themselves, to stop poisoning themselves. A car is going to stop by at the bottom of a bridge and be like, yo, bro, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
So I probably get 30 days after rehab, and then I think like I'm watching TV, and I think a beer would be nice. I'm really enjoying this show. I got 30 days. That should be enough. So, and then that started just the saddest, most pathetic, trying to hide. And it's clearly I'm drinking every day, getting hammered in my room from my brother and stuff. It's so obvious. I would hide in my room all day, trying to hide it, failing. And then I met someone. I met a girl and I fell in love. Someone I worked with at Whole Foods. We started seeing each other, and then I ended up moving out into her place. And I know there's in AA they talk a lot about the geographical cure, but I can't deny it helped a little bit, changing up my circumstances. So I got into a relationship, and then from there, yeah, it was just like that last bit of hiding the alcohol from her and getting caught every time. Because I would get a couple months, then relapse, get a month, relapse. And then October 5th, we had planned a trip to New York City. We got an Airbnb in Jersey. We were going to, see Manhattan, go to Central Park and the Metropolitan Museum and all that stuff. And I was excited. I'd never really traveled that much. We had some stability. I'd started a job as a pharmacy tech, and I snuck downstairs and I went to like a gas station and I got some 2 tall cans of malt liquor and drank those. And then in the morning, she could tell it was on my breath still, even though I brushed my teeth. And we talked about it as we drove into New York. And my first day sober, we went to New York and I stepped out into like Times Square, the place I've only seen in movies, and explored New York all day. It was an amazing. It was. It's like you can't beat that. At least for me, as a first day sober, is just to explore a new city for the first time, someone you love, and I think that day just left an impression on me. I didn't know if I was going to drink again. I didn't know if I was going to relapse after 30 days later, but just experiencing that as my first day was like, wow, you can have so much fun sober. It made me crave more life experiences.
Okay, October 6th, you're cruising the downtown of New York City. Yes, that is impressive. I live in a small town in Montana. I went to New York a couple of years ago. It was like, holy buckets, these buildings are tall. How do they not tip over? But it sounds like you had some pretty good accountability built in. You were with a partner. You chatted about it that morning. You still had malt liquor on your breath or whatnot. You weren't alone, right? And you had somebody who knew what was going on with you, that like previously every 30 days, yeah, you get some time, then relapse. And you had somebody who was involved with you, which I think was huge. And yeah, we do hear the things like geographical cures, don't get in a relationship your first year of sobriety, which yeah, I agree with that stuff, but also addiction is disconnection, right? And no fault to anybody for trying to find love. That's why we're here. And that can be a huge asset. I mean, sometimes if you look for that to replace the alcohol, yeah, no bueno, but good on you, man, for finding that. You deserve it. We all deserve it. So what was that first month like with your partner? Were they fully up to speed? You're living together, right?
Yeah, we're living together. She's supportive. I'm going to meetings. I switched therapists to one that specializes in substance use disorder. And that started a 5, 6 year relationship with a therapist. Yes, I started seeing a therapist. I started going to AA meetings again. And I got maybe 4, 5, 6 months. And my partner at the time decided she was going to go back to school for a master's degree because she had an art degree. And I dropped out of community college like 4 times. So I'm like, maybe I should try something. You feel that pressure and maybe even, a little like inferiority and just like, I need to level up. So I started taking classes for recovery support to get into the field. And I think I did 2 or 3 semesters. And over that time, it was probably like I was 8 months sober and my relationship with her ended, but I stayed in school, moved in with some roommates. And then I did an internship at a place called Hope for Recovery in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is a recovery center. And that's when I met someone named, and my ex, if that was the first person that really changed my life, he's the second. He was the executive director at the time. I did my internship with him. We hit it off immediately as friends, both into writing. And he's someone that I quickly realized this is someone that I should look up to and aim towards. The way he carried himself, the way he treated everyone with empathy, and he held himself accountable and was just a leader. And after my internship ended, my observation, whatever it was, he hired me. So I left school again because I'm like, all right, I got the job. And I started working at this recovery center for about 8 months. And that was life changing for me. To be honest, my last legit craving was when I got a year. I was really in my head about dates and days and time and chips and all that stuff. But to be honest, while I was a student studying recovery support, I got my year and I was thinking, oh, maybe the alcoholism was situational. Maybe the depression was the main thing. Maybe I can drink a little bit. But working at that center changed everything for me. It was my chance to give back, and I met so many amazing people. There were hard days. I was just a peer support person. It's a non-clinical recovery center. So my job was anyone who came through the door, how can I help you? Do you need to go to a meeting? You need help getting into like sober living or treatment or just for general resources? I can sit down with you with a laptop and we can figure it out. That was the job. And I loved it. And there were so many amazing nights. When I first started there, every time there was an AA meeting, I would say for the first 2 months, they started the part of the meeting where people went up to get chips. I had to step out of the room because it just made me tear up. Because I remember what it felt like to get that first chip, that second chip, and how important that felt, and how that small victory. That's probably the only place you're really going to get acknowledged from it, because your friends are tired of hearing about it. Your family is done with you. All sorts of things like that.
Will, I'm kind of on a cliff edge. You did not drink
I did
since,
not drink.
okay,
Yes.
because you were saying like I'm
Yes.
taking classes, I know about this, but I want to drink. Okay.
Yeah. Waited it out and the craving passed. And that was my last, I would say, legit craving. But that was my first end of my first year sober. Um,
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and that's normal, right? I
yeah.
remember doing a race, like a one and done race. It was like a 23-mile mountain race. Crossed the finish line, it was like, holy shit, I want to drink so bad. And that was like the last, anyways. Yeah, they just come at
Yeah.
any time. And you know
I know.
what, Will? It's a thought. And now
Yeah.
we have the space, right? All kinds of thoughts come into my mind that I don't act on, thank God. I think all of our minds are crazy. Will, how has your depression, just your overall sense of how you view life in general, how has that changed with that alcohol?
Oh, it's completely changed. I don't live in shame anymore. I don't live in regret anymore. I appreciate AA. I've never really in 12 step stuff. I've kind of taken a little bit from that and a little bit from what I'm learning in therapy and other resources. But I believe in, keeping my end of the street clean. And that's something that started the change in me and in early recovery times where I need to apologize. I said something stupid. And that feeling, that restlessness inside me, usually I would just drink that down. But now I felt myself changing, holding myself accountable, whether I did something or said something. And I felt like I needed to address it and apologize. When that started happening, that's when I started realizing that I was changing.
Will, what were some themes in the different years of sobriety? You're in year six. Was year two easier than year one and
Mm,
so forth moving forward? Were there
yeah.
unexpected challenges like way down the road? You're like, why am I still dealing with this?
So year one was like my relationship, the end of the relationship, the beginning of school. Year two was most of that year I spent working at the recovery center. And when that ended, I went back into different jobs through life. All sorts of stuff that's happened. I've been broke in recovery. I've been heartbroken. I've dealt with family drama, all sorts of things. And each time in my life, it's made me stronger. And I've felt like, wow, this actually isn't that bad. I'm gonna get through it. And thank God I'm not drinking because that would make this a whole lot worse.
How has your relationship with nature changed without alcohol?
My relationship with nature has changed, but I feel like my relationship with my imagination is really what has grown and expanded as far as like different writings. And I don't know, I'm an odd guy and I've always found little interest in things that I'm pursuing, whether it's creative stuff or traveling, but I feel a level of contentment with myself.
I love how you phrase that. The relationship with my imagination
Oh yeah.
has changed. Yeah, you said you're a weird guy, and you said that earlier in the interview. In my mind, I was like, aren't we all? Thankfully, the internet, like we can find our weird people if we don't find them in person. There's like a
Yeah,
club or a
for
group.
better or for worse. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a club or a group for everybody. I'm a fan of reptiles, which is not shared by a lot of people. I just like since I was a kid. I'm going to Suriname, which is right above Brazil, in like 2 weeks to go look for reptiles in the Amazon rainforest. And I tell it to people,
Amazing.
and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, meet a bunch of weirdos." Yeah, I don't say that with a derogatory way. It's just like,
Yeah.
go find your people, man. Now that you're not poisoning yourself, and I'm gonna go find a boa constrictor in the Amazon in Suriname, which is the country that has the most natural, dense virgin forest cover of any other country on the planet at 93%. And I want to go see that. I'm going to go into the most natural, pristine nature on the planet and go look for bugs and turtles and snakes. And I'm going to find an anaconda. I'm going to go swim with alligators, probably catch piranhas. And that's all because I'm sober. None of that shit was happening when I was drinking. And what's on your bucket list, Will? What's coming down the horizon in a life without alcohol?
So many things. I left the country for the first time in my life. I went to France for 3 weeks. And that's just another moment where I'm on the plane. I can't believe this is happening. I worked a bunch of overtime. I had a brilliant tutor who took time out of her day after class to tell me all these stories about how she traveled with no money and gave me the courage to put aside fear, anxiety, and do it. and I'm on the plane flying there, and the lights are out because it's overnight, and I'm just crying. I'm just like, I'm so proud that I made this happen. And I was there for 3 weeks. I did a little language learning, stayed with the host family. It was in southern France, so Bordeaux. So more traveling, going back to France, working on more writing projects, comic books, maybe independent film, maybe another novel, who knows?
Will, it's your time in the treatment center or the recovery center or whatnot. What were some common pitfalls when people came in? You're like, how can I help you? Well, I'm struggling with.
A lot of drugs. I have a little bit of drugs in my history, not a lot. I have enough problems with drinking, but I feel like a lot of people came in looking for help with, there's a lot of drugs. There was some alcoholism, but a lot of drugs. The people that did come in with alcohol that were drunk, they were the most unpredictable.
Yeah, I've spoken with law enforcement a handful of times, and they all agree that somebody who's drunk is like the most volatile, unpredictable, dangerous person you can encounter. Seriously, like the domestic violence calls that involve alcohol, it's crazy. Yeah, and I just heard they took cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which cool. No one's ever overdosed on cannabis, but where the hell is alcohol on that? I did some research into it, and there was a law passed in the 70s to prohibit alcohol, the most dangerous drug in America, to even be included on that list. Anyways, I'm so glad we are on the other side of that. Will, we have hit the rapid fire round. If you can answer these questions in 5 to 10 seconds, that would be great. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Hey, what's the one thing you've learned about yourself, Will?
I've learned that my imagination is really deep, and empathy has really grown in me for other people.
What's your favorite alcohol-free drink?
Maybe like a pink lemonade.
What's the point of life?
I don't know if there is one. Maybe eat, sleep, procreate. Yeah, 2 out of 3. I'm not doing too bad.
You're doing great. What has sobriety made possible for you, Will?
Being able to connect with so many people and show myself some grace, because there was a lot of times where that was impossible. It felt impossible.
Yeah, what parting piece of guidance can you give somebody who wants to quit drinking?
I think at some point, I know it's a big thing in AA, but like trying to give back or pay it forward in some way. It was huge for me working in a recovery center. It's different for everyone. Some people it's, doing the sponsor things within 12-step. You could volunteer somewhere, you could work in recovery, but I think at some point trying to pay it forward and give back and contribute out into the world, it's huge.
And then before we depart, Will, let's hear your own. You might need to ditch the booze if line.
You might need to ditch the booze if your buddy comes over your house for a night of drinking, stays the night. You make a fool of yourself, so he throws out the box of wine and the trash can at the end of the driveway on his way out the door. And then you wake up searching for it, find it, and send him a picture pulling it out of the trash.
Haven't heard that one yet. That's
yeah. I could be a troll.
Yeah, love it. Hey, Will, thank you so much for helping me on my journey. Look, I'm still on the sober train myself, and conversations like this help me. I know it's going to help a lot of listeners. Thank you so much, Will.
Thank you so much.
I was just sent a pack of NA beers from Rationale Brewing, and damn, pretty good. I want to be clear, that's not a paid advertisement. I have had NA breweries send me stuff, and I have not mentioned their product on the air. So again, this Rationale Brewing, check it out. The explosion of alcohol-free beverages in the last decade has been such an incredible thing to watch. And I said this in an interview, this is going to come out in the future, that I think this whole thing can be attributed to women, to mothers who lost children to drunk drivers. So in the 80s, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that whole campaign lobbied so hard for alcohol companies or for there at least to be an NA option available in bars and restaurants. Now, they purposely made this NA option, think O'Doul's, to taste bland, and it did. And they tucked it away at the bottom of coolers where you just couldn't see it. But thank you, women, for perhaps getting the whole alcohol-free movement going. And that just shows how powerful a mother's love for her child is. I want to thank our production team for today's episode. We have our editor, Natasha, Robin on the show notes, and Chris on the mixing boards putting it all together.
Wiki.
Recovery elevator, you took the elevator down, you got to take the stairs back up. We can do this.
I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior.